The simulation room fell silent. Every cadet in the observation deck stared at the main screen, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The Kuburo scenario was supposed to be impossible. For 50 years, no one had ever beaten it. Hundreds of the galaxy's best military minds had tried and failed. Yet Hana Yoon, a 19-year-old human girl from Earth, had just solved it in 23 minutes. Admiral Thalmor stood at the back of the room, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he watched the replay. He was 240 years old, a veteran of countless wars, and he had designed the Kuburo scenario himself. It was meant to teach cadets about impossible situations, about knowing when to retreat. It was never meant to be won. "Explain your strategy, Cadet Yoon," the Admiral said, his voice cold and sharp. Hana stepped forward. She was small compared to most of the other cadets, especially the towering aliens from warrior species. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail and her uniform was spotless. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "The scenario assumes we fight like everyone expects us to fight," she said. 3 enemy fleets, superior numbers, defensive positions. Traditional tactics say we need more ships or better weapons. But humans learned something different in our history. When you can't win the battle they want, you change the rules. Admiral Thalmor's scaled face showed no emotion. "Continue." "I sent my fighters to attack their supply lines first," Hana explained. "Not their warships. Their supplies. The simulation didn't account for that because most species consider it dishonorable. While their fleets were strong, their logistics were vulnerable. I cut their fuel shipments, destroyed their ammunition depots, and hacked their communication relays." She pulled up a holographic display, showing the battle from different angles. By the time they realized what was happening, their ships couldn't coordinate. Some ran out of fuel and drifted. Others couldn't communicate with their command structure. I didn't destroy their fleets in direct combat. I made it impossible for them to fight as a unified force. Then I picked them apart, one confused group at a time. The observation deck remained quiet. Some cadets looked impressed. Others looked uncomfortable. This wasn't how war was supposed to be fought, not according to the ancient traditions of the Coalition. "You sacrificed honor for victory," Admiral Thalmor said. "I sacrificed nothing," Hana replied, meeting his gaze without fear. "My people have a saying, all's fair in love and war. If the enemy wants to follow rules that make them predictable, that's their weakness, not mine. Every life I save by being unpredictable is a life that goes home to their family." A Veracian cadet, one of Thalmor's own species, spoke up from the crowd. "But what about courage? What about facing your enemy with honor?" Hana turned to face him. "Is it courageous to send soldiers to die in a battle you could have won more easily? Is it honorable to follow tradition when innovation could save lives? My instructor, Captain Park, taught me something important. He said that humans are new to the galaxy, and that gives us an advantage. We don't have 10,000 years of military tradition telling us there's only one way to fight." Captain Daiho Park stood near the entrance, watching the scene unfold. He was a quiet man, former Special Forces with more scars than he liked to talk about. He had been skeptical when Hana first arrived at the academy. She was too young, too small, too eager, but over the past year he had watched her do things that shouldn't have been possible. Admiral Thalmor stepped closer to the holographic display. He studied Hana's battle plan, his clawed fingers tracing the movements of her ships. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he began to speak. "I have commanded fleets for over a century," he said slowly. "I have won battles that are studied in every military academy in Coalition space. I have 3 of my victories permanently displayed in the Hall of Honor. You know which ones, Cadet Yoon? The Battle of Crimson Nebula, the defense of Vareth Prime, and the siege of Outpost 17. Hana answered immediately. "Correct." Thalmor pulled up data on those 3 battles. "Now, tell me how your methods would have changed those outcomes." It was a challenge, and everyone in the room knew it. The Admiral was daring this human girl to criticize his greatest achievements. Several cadets held their breath, waiting to see if Hana would back down. She didn't. "At Crimson Nebula, you fought a traditional engagement," Hana said, walking up to the display. "Fleet against fleet, formation against formation. You won, but you lost 40% of your ships. If you had sent fast attack craft to disable their command ship's engines first, you could have forced them to negotiate. Casualties on both sides would have been minimal." Thalmor's expression remained unreadable. "Continue." "At Vareth Prime, you held the line against a siege for 6 months. Thousands died from attrition, but the enemy had to bring supplies through a single asteroid field. 3 stealth ships with mines could have cut their supply route in a week. The siege would have broken without firing a shot. And Outpost 17? The Admiral asked quietly. Hana hesitated for the first time. That battle had been brutal. Thalmor had held a strategic outpost against overwhelming odds, and though he won, nearly everyone under his command had died. It was considered the most heroic last stand in recent history. You didn't have to make it a last stand, Hana said softly. You could have evacuated the personnel and rigged the outpost to explode when the enemy took it. Same strategic result, fewer deaths. Sometimes retreat is smarter than sacrifice. The room erupted. Some cadets shouted in agreement. Others called Hana disrespectful. A few of the alien cadets looked genuinely offended that she would suggest their greatest war heroes had fought incorrectly. Admiral Thalmor raised one clawed hand, and silence fell immediately. You are either brilliant or dangerously arrogant, he said to Hana. Perhaps both. Your tactics are effective, but they show no respect for the ways of war that have kept the coalition strong for millennia. Respectfully, Admiral, those ways almost got the coalition conquered by the Krythax 20 years ago, Hana replied. Humans only joined the coalition 30 years ago, but we've studied every major conflict. The galaxy doesn't need more of the same old strategies. It needs adaptation. Thalmor stared at her for a long, tense moment. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. You will graduate at the top of your class, Cadet Yoon. The simulation proves that much. But remember this, simulations don't bleed. Real soldiers do. When you have command and your decisions cost lives, we will see if your confidence remains. After the Admiral left, the other cadets slowly filed out, some whispering excitedly, others shooting Hana dark looks. Captain Park approached her, his expression serious. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen a cadet do, he said. I only told the truth, Hana replied. The truth can make powerful enemies, Park warned. Thalmor is respected throughout the coalition. Challenging him publicly was dangerous. Hana looked at the now empty simulation display. If I can't speak the truth here at the Academy, where can I? Besides, someone has to show them that humanity isn't here to follow old rules. We're here to make things better. Park smiled slightly. Just remember, the real test isn't winning simulations. It's commanding real people in real battles, where mistakes mean your crew doesn't come home. That's when we'll see what kind of commander you really are. Hana nodded. She understood the weight of what was coming, but she also knew something that the older species hadn't quite grasped yet. Humanity had spent thousands of years fighting itself, developing new tactics, adapting to every kind of warfare imaginable. Humans were good at war not because they were strong or technologically advanced, but because they never stopped learning, never stopped changing. And now, the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The CFS Dauntless hung in orbit above the frontier zone's edge, a destroyer-class vessel that had seen better days. Its hull bore scars from a dozen engagements, and its crew had a reputation for being difficult. When Hana Yoon walked through the airlock for the first time as their commander, she could feel their doubt like a physical thing. She was 21 years old. Some of the junior officers were older than her. The previous captain had been relieved of duty after a disastrous patrol, and morale was at rock bottom. The crew expected another veteran, another traditional commander. Instead, they got a young human woman who looked like she should still be in the academy. Lieutenant Minho Choi met her at the airlock. He was in his early 30s, human, and had served on the Dauntless for 5 years. His expression was carefully neutral, but his body language said everything. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to serve under someone younger than him. He definitely didn't want to serve under someone who had never commanded a real ship before. Welcome aboard, Commander, he said formally. The crew is assembled in the main hangar. Hana nodded. Good, let's not keep them waiting. The hangar was packed with personnel. Humans, Veracians, Korthians, and half a dozen other species, all in coalition uniforms, all watching her with skeptical eyes. Hana stood on a raised platform and looked out at them. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she studied their faces, seeing the exhaustion, the frustration, the loss of faith. I know what you're thinking, she finally said, her voice carrying clearly through the space. You're wondering what you did wrong to get stuck with the youngest commander in the fleet. You're wondering if I'm here because I'm actually good or because someone in command is playing politics with your lives. A few crew members shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slightly. "I'm not going to lie to you," Hana continued. "I've never commanded a ship before. I've run simulations, I've studied tactics, but I've never been responsible for real people in real combat. So yes, I'm inexperienced. But here's what I am good at. I'm good at winning. I'm good at keeping people alive. And I'm good at not following stupid rules just because they're traditional." She stepped forward to the edge of the platform. "This ship has a bad reputation. Everyone knows the Dauntless is where careers come to die. But I don't believe in bad ships, only bad leadership. Starting today, things change. I will never ask you to do something I wouldn't do myself. I will never sacrifice your lives for glory or tradition, and I will never ever give up on any of you." The crew remained silent, but something in their expressions shifted slightly. They were listening. "Now," Hana said, "let's get to work." The first week was difficult. The crew followed orders, but there was no trust, no connection. Drills were sloppy. Communications were slow. Minho barely spoke to her except when necessary. Hana spent every moment studying the crew files, learning who they were, what they were good at, what scared them. Then came the distress call. "Commander, we're receiving an emergency transmission from mining colony Sigma 7. The communications officer reported. "They're under attack by raiders. At least 9 hostile ships." Minho immediately pulled up the tactical display. "We're the closest coalition vessel, but we're only one ship. Standard protocol says we call for reinforcements and maintain position." "How long until reinforcements arrive?" Hana asked. 4 hours minimum." Hana looked at the display. 9 raider ships against her single destroyer. The colony had maybe 2 hours before it was overrun. By the time reinforcements arrived, everyone there would be dead or taken as slaves. "Set course for Sigma 7, she ordered. "Maximum speed." "Commander, that's suicide," Minho protested. "We're outnumbered 9 to 1. Hana turned to face him. "If we were fighting them ship to ship in open space, yes. But we're not going to do that. Trust me, Lieutenant. Or at least give me a chance to prove I know what I'm doing." Minho held her gaze for a moment, then nodded stiffly. "Course set." As the Dauntless accelerated toward the colony, Hana called the senior staff to the briefing room. She pulled up a detailed map of the Sigma 7 system. "The raiders are using standard pirate tactics," she explained. "They surround the colony, destroy defenses, then land troops. They're confident because they outnumber us and think we'll follow standard coalition doctrine." "Which is?" asked the Korthian weapons officer. "Call for backup and engage cautiously," Hana said. "But humans have fought pirates for thousands of years in Earth's oceans. We learned that pirates rely on predictability. They choose targets they can overwhelm. They avoid fights that might damage their ships. Most importantly, they're not unified. They're 9 separate crews looking for profit." She highlighted several points on the map. "Sigma 7 is near an asteroid field with heavy metal content. Our sensors work fine there, but it creates interference for older raider equipment. We're going to use that." Over the next 30 minutes, Hana laid out her plan. It was crazy. It was brilliant. It was nothing like anything they'd trained for. When she finished, the senior staff looked at each other uncertainly. "You want us to make them think we're 3 ships instead of 1? Minho asked. "Exactly," Hana confirmed. "We'll use the asteroids as cover, deploy sensor decoys, and hit them from unexpected angles. Pirates are cowards at heart. If they think they're facing organized resistance instead of helpless prey, they'll panic." "And if they don't panic?" the engineer asked. "Then we adapt," Hana said simply. "That's what humans do best." The battle was like nothing the Dauntless crew had ever experienced. Hana was everywhere at once, on the bridge, checking with engineering, coordinating with weapons. Her orders came fast and precise. The ship danced through the asteroid field like it was alive, appearing here, firing, disappearing, appearing somewhere else. The first raider ship took damage and panicked, breaking formation. The second assumed they were surrounded and tried to flee, only to run straight into the Dauntless's weapons range. The third actually opened fire on the fourth in the confusion, thinking it was an enemy. Hana watched the tactical display with intense focus. She could see patterns in the chaos, could predict where the raiders would go before they knew themselves. It was like the entire battle existed in her mind as a 3-dimensional puzzle, and she was solving it in real time. 2 raiders breaking off, Minho reported, and there was excitement in his voice now. 3 more are requesting to negotiate. "Tell them to power down weapons and prepare to be boarded," Hana ordered. "Any ship that tries to run gets disabled." The entire engagement lasted 47 minutes. Not a single colonist died. The Dauntless took minor damage to the port shield generator, easily repaired. 9 raider ships were captured or destroyed, and most importantly, not one member of Hana's crew was killed. When the bridge crew realized what they'd accomplished, someone started clapping. Then another joined in. Soon the entire bridge was applauding, and people were grinning at each other with something that had been missing for months: pride. Minho approached Hana as she stood studying the aftermath on the display. "I was wrong about you, Commander. I've never seen anything like that. I told you I was good at winning," Hana said with a slight smile, "but I didn't do that alone. This crew is better than they think they are. They just needed someone to show them." Over the next few days, everything changed. The crew walked taller. They responded faster in drills. When Hana gave orders, they were followed immediately, not because of her rank, but because they trusted her. Minho became her strongest supporter, anticipating her needs before she had to ask. One evening, as Hana sat in her quarters reviewing the day's reports, her door chimed. It was Minho. "The crew wanted me to give you this," he said, handing her a small datapad. On it was a message signed by every member of the crew. It was simple. "Thank you for believing in us." Hana felt something tighten in her chest. Command was heavier than she'd expected, but it was also more rewarding than any simulation could have prepared her for. "Tell them they earned it themselves," she said quietly. As Minho left, Hana looked out the viewport at the stars. This was only the beginning. She had proven she could command, proven she could win. But Captain Park's words echoed in her mind. The real test was still coming. Somewhere out there, a real war was waiting, and when it arrived, the whole galaxy would be watching to see if the youngest commander could truly match the greatest. She was ready to show them. The emergency klaxons woke Hana from a deep sleep. She was dressed and running toward the bridge in under 30 seconds, her mind already racing through possibilities. The Dauntless had been on routine patrol near the Helios sector when the alarm sounded. Routine patrols didn't have emergency alarms. "Report," she called out as she entered the bridge. Minho looked grim. "We're receiving distress signals from everywhere. The Krythak swarm just broke through the outer defense lines. 3 entire fleets destroyed in the first wave. They're heading straight for Coalition core worlds." Hana felt her blood run cold. The Krythaks were the nightmare scenario every military officer trained for but hoped would never happen. They were an insectoid hive mind species, billions of individuals controlled by a few queen minds. When they attacked, they came in numbers that blotted out the stars. "How many ships?" she asked. "Initial reports say thousands," the tactical officer replied. "Maybe tens of thousands. They're still counting." The communications console lit up with an incoming priority message. It was from Coalition Central Command. Grand Marshal Vex Thor's face appeared on the screen, his usually calm features tight with stress. "All ships are to report immediately to Rally Point Helios," he ordered. "We're forming a defensive line. This is not a drill. The Krythaks have declared total war." Over the next 6 hours, Coalition ships poured into the Helios sector from every corner of known space. Hana watched as hundreds of vessels formed up, the largest military gathering she had ever seen. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, frigates, all preparing for what everyone knew would be the fight of their lives. She was summoned to a strategy meeting on the command ship. When she arrived, she found herself in a room full of admirals and fleet commanders, many of them centuries old. She was easily the youngest person there by decades. Admiral Thalmor was present, his reptilian eyes surveying the holographic display of enemy movements. When he saw Hana, he gave a slight nod. Since her academy graduation, he had followed her career with interest. Her victory at Sigma 7 had impressed even him. "The situation is critical," Grand Marshal Vex Thor began. "The Krythaks are using coordinated swarm tactics we've never seen before. Their queens are communicating faster and more efficiently than our intelligence predicted. Traditional engagement strategies have failed. We need new ideas." For the next hour, various commanders proposed plans. All of them involved forming defensive lines, using superior firepower, fighting ship-to-ship battles. All of them, Hana realized, would fail. The Krythaks didn't fight like individuals. They fought like a single organism. Destroying individual ships meant nothing when 1,000 more were right behind them. "Permission to speak, Marshal," Hana said during a brief pause. Every head in the room turned toward her. Some faces showed curiosity. Others showed irritation that someone so junior would interrupt. "Granted," Vexthor said. Hana stepped forward to the display. "We're thinking about this wrong. We're treating the Krithax like they're individual ships with individual commanders. But they're not. They're a hive mind. Their strength is coordination, but that's also their weakness." She manipulated the display, highlighting the pattern of Krithax movements. "Look at how they move. Perfect synchronization, no wasted motion. That's because their queens are sending commands through a quantum communication network. If we can identify the queens and disrupt their signals, the entire fleet loses coordination." "We've tried targeting their command ships before," another admiral said dismissively. "They're too well protected." "Because we attack them directly," Hana countered. "But what if we don't? Human military history has a concept called electronic warfare. We don't destroy the communication, we corrupt it. We feed false data into their network. Make the queens think their ships are somewhere they're not." Admiral Thalmor leaned forward, studying the display. "Explain how this would work in practice." "We deploy specialized signal jammers," Hana said, speaking faster now. "Not to block their communications, but to inject false positioning data. Their ships will think they're in formation when they're actually scattered. Some will collide. Others will fire on their own forces. By the time they realize what's happening, we hit them with everything we have." The room fell silent as the commanders considered this. It was risky. It required technology they'd have to develop quickly. But it was also the first strategy anyone had proposed that might actually work. "It's insane," someone muttered. "It's brilliant," Thalmor said quietly. "Marshal, I recommend we proceed with Commander Yoon's plan." Vexthor studied Hana for a long moment. "How old are you, Commander?" 22, sir." 22, he repeated. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "I'm 317, and you just thought of something I should have seen myself. This is why humans are valuable to the Coalition. You see what we can't." He turned to the room. "We're implementing Commander Yoon's strategy. She'll have command of the task force responsible for the electronic warfare component." The next 48 hours were chaos. Hana barely slept, coordinating with scientists and engineers to build the signal jammers. She worked alongside Ji-won Kim, her old academy rival, who had become one of the Coalition's best electronic warfare specialists. Together, they modified communication drones to become signal corruption devices. "This is crazy, you know that?" Ji-won said as they calibrated the 10th jammer. "Probably," Hana agreed. "But crazy is better than certain death." When the Krithax fleet arrived at Helios Prime, they came like a living wall of chitin and metal. Their numbers were even worse than initial estimates. 40,000 ships, maybe more, all moving in perfect synchronization. The Coalition fleet looked tiny by comparison, but Hana's task force was in position, hidden among the debris of a destroyed station. 12 ships, including the Dauntless, each carrying multiple signal jammers. "All units, this is Commander Yoon," she transmitted on the secure channel. "Wait for my mark. We deploy all jammers simultaneously. Once they're active, we have maybe 10 minutes before the Krithax adapt. Make every second count." The Krithax fleet advanced, confident in their overwhelming numbers. Coalition ships opened fire, but it was like shooting into an ocean. For every Krithax ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. Then Hana gave the order, "Deploy jammers. Now." 100 small devices shot out from her task force, spreading throughout the battlefield. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then everything went wrong for the Krithax. Their perfect formations dissolved into chaos. Ships collided with each other. Some opened fire on their own allies, their targeting systems confused by false data. The Queens screamed commands through their network, but the jammers corrupted every message, turning coordinated strategy into pandemonium. "All ships, attack now," Hana commanded. "Target the Queens." The Coalition fleet surged forward. With the Krithax confused and disorganized, the Queen's command ships were suddenly vulnerable. Hana led her task force straight into the heart of The enemy formation, dodging debris and friendly fire, her focus absolute. She found the primary queen ship, a massive biomechanical construct that pulsed with organic technology. "Concentrate all fire on that target," she ordered. The Dauntless and 5 other ships hammered the queen ship with everything they had. Its shields held, then flickered, then collapsed. The hull cracked open, and the queen inside died, taking a portion of the hive mind with it. Across the battlefield, other coalition forces found and destroyed more queens. Each time one died, thousands of Krythax ships went dormant, their connection to the hive mind severed. But victory came with a price. The Krythax, even in chaos, were still numerous and deadly. Hana watched as 3 coalition ships exploded, their crews vaporized in an instant. One of them was the destroyer Valiant, where she had friends. People she had eaten lunch with just days ago. Gone in a flash of light. "Commander, we're taking heavy damage," Minho reported. "Port shields at 20%. "Keep firing," Hana ordered, pushing down the grief. There would be time to mourn later. Right now she had to finish what she started. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the Krythax fleet was in full retreat. Their coordination shattered, their queens decimated. The coalition had won the greatest victory in recent history. But the aftermath was grim. 15,000 coalition personnel dead, 47 ships destroyed completely, hundreds more damaged, space stations in ruins, colonies scarred by fighting. Hana sat in her quarters after the battle, hands shaking from exhaustion and emotion. On her desk was a list of names. Every person who had died under her command. 317 from her task force alone. She would write to every family, personally. It was the least she could do. There was a knock on her door. Grand. Marshal Vexthor entered, his ancient face showing deep fatigue. "Commander Yoon," he said formally, then paused. "Hana, you saved us today. Without your strategy, we would have been overrun. 317 people died in my task force," Hana said quietly. 317 died, Vexthor acknowledged. But 300,000 lived. That's the burden of command. You make choices and people die. But more people live because you made the right choices. He placed a datapad on her desk. Effective immediately, you're promoted to full commander and given permanent command of a battle group. You're also the youngest person to ever achieve this rank, and see the Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was the most impressive building Hana had ever seen. Carved from a single massive crystal, it refracted light into 1,000 colors. Representatives from 50 species sat in ascending tiers, looking down at the central floor where speakers presented their cases. Today, Hana stood in that central spot, feeling very small and very human. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Helios Prime. She had been celebrated as a hero, given medals, promoted again. Her face was on news feeds across Coalition space. The youngest commander who saved the galaxy from the Krythax. It all sounded impressive, but not everyone was celebrating. Counselor Ethron, a tall crystalline being whose species had been part of the Coalition for over 10,000 years, stood to address the assembly. His voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes. "We gather today to discuss a matter of grave importance," he began. "The rapid advancement of humans, and specifically, Commander Hana Yoon. While we acknowledge her recent victory, we must question whether such youth and inexperience should hold positions of power in our military." Hana kept her face neutral, but inside, she felt anger rising. She had known this was coming. The victory at Helios had made her famous, but it had also made her a target. Ancient species didn't like being shown up by newcomers. "Commander Yoon is 22 years old," Ethran continued. "Many of us in this chamber are thousands of years old. We have experience, wisdom, perspective that no human can match. Yet we are expected to trust our fleets, our lives, to someone who has barely lived." Another counselor, a Narration like Admiral Thalmor, stood. Furthermore, the casualties at Helios Prime were significant. 317 under her direct command, 15,000 total. Perhaps a more experienced commander would have found a less costly solution. Ambassador Kyung Park, Earth's representative, rose to speak. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and dignified. "The casualties were tragic, yes, But without Commander Yoon's strategy, the casualties would have been in the millions. The Krythax would have broken through to our core worlds. That's speculation, Ethron said coldly. What we know for certain is that this human's tactics are reckless, unconventional, dangerous. She disregards centuries of established military doctrine in favor of improvisation. That improvisation saved your world too, Counselor, Ambassador Park replied sharply. The debate went on for hours. Hana stood silently, required to be present but not permitted to speak unless directly questioned. She listened to her actions being dissected, her methods criticized, her age used as evidence of incompetence. Some counselors defended her. Others called for her removal from command. Finally, Counselor Ethron turned to face her directly. Commander Yoon, you have been silent. Do you have nothing to say in your own defense? I was not given permission to speak, Hana replied calmly. You have it now. Explain to this council why someone of your limited years should command fleets when beings with millennia of experience are available. Hana took a breath. She could feel thousands of eyes on her, both in the chamber and watching through broadcasts across the galaxy. What she said next would matter. Counselor Ethron, how many wars have you personally fought in? She asked. The crystalline being seemed taken aback by the question. I have overseen policy during 17 major conflicts. Overseen policy, Hana repeated. But you've never been in a ship during battle. You've never had to make split-second decisions while people are dying around you. You've never felt the deck shaking from weapons fire or watched a friend's ship explode. My species does not engage in direct combat, Ethron said stiffly. We are diplomats and administrators. Exactly, Hana said. You have 10,000 years of experience in diplomacy. I have that respect. But I have something you don't. I have experience in modern warfare. The galaxy has changed. The Krythax proved that. Old strategies don't work anymore. If we keep fighting like we did 1,000 years ago, we'll lose. She turned to address the full council. You say I'm young, and that's true. But humans are young as a species in the coalition. We joined only 30 years ago. That means we don't have thousands of years of tradition telling us there's only one way to do things. We look at problems with fresh eyes. A Narration counselor stood. Fresh eyes that cost 15,000 lives. Hana felt that like a physical blow, but she didn't look away. Yes, 15,000 died, and I know every one of their names. I wrote to every family. I carry their loss with me every day. But do you know how many would have died if we fought the way you wanted, the way your traditional tactics required? She pulled up a holographic display showing tactical projections. Our military analyst ran the numbers. Traditional engagement with the Krythax fleet at Helios would have resulted in total defeat within 4 hours. Projected casualties 3 million coalition personnel. 40 inhabited worlds overrun. The war would have been lost. The council chamber fell silent as members studied the projections. 15,000 deaths is a tragedy, Hana continued, her voice steady. But it's a tragedy that prevented a catastrophe. Every commander makes choices. Every choice has consequences. The question isn't whether people die. In war, people always die. The question is, do you make the choice that gives your people the best chance to survive? Admiral Thalamore, who had been sitting in the observer section, stood and requested permission to speak. When it was granted, he walked to the center floor beside Hana. Counselors, I taught Commander Yoon at the academy. I thought she was reckless. I thought her methods were disrespectful to our traditions. He paused. I was wrong. Murmurs spread through the chamber. After the Battle of Helios Prime, the Krythax launched a secondary attack on Varith Prime, my homeworld. Thalamore continued. I commanded the defense. We were outnumbered. I used Commander Yoon's electronic warfare tactics, the same ones this council is now questioning. Because of her strategy, we won. Because of her unorthodox thinking, my world still stands. He turned to face Hana, and for the first time she saw something like respect in his ancient eyes. I have 300 years of military experience. I have won battles that are studied in every academy. And this human, barely old enough to understand the galaxy, taught me something I should have learned centuries ago. Experience without adaptation is just repeating old mistakes. Other voices began to join in. Commander Somin Lee, captain of the battlecruiser Indomitable, testified about how Hana's tactics had saved her ship during a skirmish. A Korthian admiral spoke about human creativity in combat. Even some of the younger counselors from ancient species began to question whether age automatically meant better judgment. But Counselor Ethron wasn't finished. All of this is beside the point. The real question is one of precedent. If we allow humans to rise this quickly, to hold this much power after such a short time in the coalition, what message does that send? That tradition means nothing. That age means nothing. It sends a message that competence means everything, Ambassador Park said firmly. That results matter more than protocol. That saving lives is more important than protecting pride. Grand Marshal Vexthor, who had been silent until now, rose from his seat. As Supreme Commander of all Coalition forces, his word carried immense weight. This debate has gone on long enough, he said, his voice cutting through the arguments. Let me make something clear. Commander Yoon serves under my authority. Her tactics are reviewed by military command, not political councils. If you want to question military decisions, then question me. He walked down to stand beside Hana and Thalmor. I am over 300 years old. I have commanded fleets since before some of your species joined the coalition. And I'm telling you now, Hana Yoon is one of the finest military minds I've encountered in my entire career. Her age is irrelevant. Her results speak for themselves. But the precedent, Ethron began. The precedent is that we promote based on ability, Vexthor interrupted. Always have, always will. If that makes some uncomfortable because the able person is young or human or female, that's their problem. Not the coalition's, the vote was called. When it concluded, Hana retained her command, but it wasn't unanimous. Nearly a third of the council had voted against her. She had won the political battle, but she had also gained powerful enemies. After the session ended, Ambassador Park found her in a quiet corridor outside the chamber. You handled that well. Better than I expected. I just told the truth, Hana said. The truth isn't always enough in politics, Park replied. But today it was. Just remember, Hana, you've made enemies here. Counselor Ethron and his allies won't forget this. They'll be watching for any mistake, any failure they can use against you. Then I won't make mistakes, Hana said simply. Park smiled sadly. Everyone makes mistakes, Commander. The question is what happens when you do. That night, Hana stood on a balcony overlooking Nexus Prime's capital city. Millions of lights sparkled below, representing billions of lives across dozens of species, all of them depending on the coalition to protect them. She thought about the 15,000 who died at Helios. She thought about the 3 million who would have died without her strategy. Shh. The Veil Nebula was beautiful and deadly. Clouds of ionized gas stretched across millions of kilometers, glowing in shades of purple and blue. It was also the worst place in coalition space to fight a battle. Sensors barely worked. Communications cut in and out. Navigation required constant manual adjustments, which made it perfect territory for whoever was attacking coalition supply convoys. Hana studied the tactical display in the Dauntless's briefing room. 6 convoys had disappeared in the past month. No survivors, no wreckage, no clues. Just gone, as if they had been erased from existence. It doesn't make sense, Minho said, pointing at the map. Pirates usually leave something behind, but these ships just vanish. It's not pirates, Lieutenant Yoonji Nam said quietly. She was the newest addition to Hana's command, transferred from Coalition Intelligence 2 weeks ago. Young, sharp-eyed, and brilliant with data analysis. Pirates want profit. They take cargo, maybe ransom crew. They don't make ships disappear without a trace. Then what are we dealing with? Asked Jiwon Kim, who had joined Hana's task force as electronic warfare specialist after Helios Prime. Someone with inside information, Yoonji replied. Someone who knows convoy routes, schedules, security protocols. Someone inside the coalition. The room fell silent. The idea of a traitor within their own organization was hard to accept. You're sure about this? Hana asked. Yoonji pulled up data on her console. The attacks are too precise. Every convoy that disappeared was carrying critical supplies to outer colonies. Food, medicine, defense equipment. Someone is deliberately targeting our weakest points. And they know exactly when and where to strike. Hana felt cold anger settling in her chest. How high up does this go? I don't know yet, Yunji admitted. But high enough to access classified information. Admiral level, maybe higher. That's a serious accusation, Minho warned. That's why we need proof, Hana said, and why we're going into the Veil Nebula ourselves. Whoever is doing this will come for us too. When they do, we'll be ready. The next morning, Hana's task force entered the nebula. 12 ships, including the Dauntless, carrying supplies marked as high-priority medical equipment. But the cargo holds also contained something else. Combat teams in powered armor, ready to repel borders. If your theory is right, we're bait, Minho said quietly to Hana on the bridge. Yes, she agreed, but bait with teeth. For 2 days, nothing happened. The task force moved slowly through the nebula, sensors straining against the interference. Then on the third day, Yunji's console lit up. I'm detecting something, she reported. Not ships, more like shadows, moving parallel to our course. Battle stations, Hana ordered immediately. All crews to combat readiness. The attack came without warning. Ships appeared from the nebula clouds, sleek and dark, using stealth technology far more advanced than standard coalition equipment. They moved with military precision, not the chaotic tactics of pirates. Return fire, Hana commanded. G1, start scanning their systems. I want to know who they are. The battle was brutal. The enemy ships were fast and well coordinated. They used the nebula to their advantage, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. But Hana had been preparing for this. Her crews were ready, her tactics adapted to the environment. Got something, G1 called out. Their communication protocols. They're using modified coalition frequencies. These aren't pirates. These are coalition ships. What? Minho stared at the screen in disbelief. Not current ships, G1 clarified. But the technology is ours. Someone gave them coalition equipment, codes, everything. Hana's mind raced. This wasn't just theft. This was organized, planned, supported from within. Disable one of their ships. I want prisoners. It took 20 minutes of intense fighting, but they managed to cripple one of the enemy vessels. Marines boarded it, finding a crew of mixed species wearing unmarked uniforms. Under interrogation, one of them finally talked. We're the Wraith Collective, he said. We're trying to save the coalition from itself. You're too weak, too soft. The council spends more time arguing about politics than preparing for war. Someone has to do what's necessary. And making supply ships disappear is necessary? Hana asked coldly. Those supplies were going to colonies that can't defend themselves. Wasted resources. The strong survive. The weak fall. That's how nature works. Hana felt disgust rising in her throat. And who decides who's strong and who's weak? The prisoner smiled. Someone much smarter than you, Commander. Someone who sees the bigger picture. Over the next week, Yunji worked day and night analyzing captured data from the Wraith ship. She traced financial records, communication logs, supply requisitions. Slowly, a pattern emerged. I found him, she announced one evening, her voice shaking. The person funding and organizing the Wraith Collective. She pulled up a file. Hana read the name and felt her world shift. Admiral Kwan, one of the Coalition's most respected commanders. A hero of 3 wars. A man who sat on the military council that oversaw all Coalition forces. A man Hana had met personally, who had congratulated her after Helios Prime. Are you absolutely certain? Hana asked. 100%, Yunji confirmed. He's been diverting resources for years, setting up secret bases in the Veil Nebula, recruiting people who believe the Coalition has grown too weak. He's building a shadow fleet. Why? Minho asked. What does he gain? Control, Hana said, understanding clicking into place. He creates a crisis, makes the Coalition look weak and ineffective. Then he offers his solution, military rule. No more political debates, no more council votes. Just strong leadership making hard decisions. We need to report this immediately, Yunji said. To who? Hana asked grimly. Admiral Kwan has allies. We don't know how many or how high they go. If we report through normal channels, he'll know we're coming. She pulled up a star map of the Veil Nebula. "We need to find his base and gather undeniable proof. Then we take it directly to Grand Marshal Vexthor. No one else." The hunt took 3 weeks. Hana's task force moved through the nebula like ghosts themselves, tracking supply movements, intercepting communications, slowly narrowing down possible locations. They fought 3 more engagements with Wraith ships, each time being careful to leave no survivors who could warn Admiral Quan. Finally, they found it. A massive station hidden deep in the nebula, shielded from sensors by the same technology the Wraith ships used. Dozens of vessels docked there, thousands of personnel. This wasn't a small operation. This was a full military force. "We can't take them all," Minho said, studying the tactical readout. "We don't need to," Hana replied. "We just need to get inside, get evidence, and get out." She assembled a strike team, herself, Minho, Ji-won, Yoonji, and 10 of her best Marines. They would infiltrate using a captured Wraith ship, posing as returning patrol. It was dangerous. It was probably crazy. But it was the only way. The infiltration went smoothly at first. The captured ship's codes got them through the station's defenses. They docked, disembarked, and began searching for the command center where evidence would be stored. But someone had been watching. Alarms blared, blast doors slammed shut, and Admiral Kwan's face appeared on every screen throughout the station. "Commander Yoon," he said, his voice disappointed. "I had hoped you were smarter than this. You should have joined us. Someone with your talents could have helped build something great." "You mean help you betray everything the Coalition stands for?" Hana replied, knowing he could hear her through the station's systems. "The Coalition is dying," Kwan said. "Too many species arguing, too much bureaucracy, too much weakness. I'm trying to save it. By attacking our own people? By making supply ships disappear? That's not salvation. That's terrorism." "That's necessity," Kwan corrected. "Sometimes you have to burn away the rot to save the tree. You're young, Hana. You don't understand yet. But you will, if you survive today." The firefight was intense. Wraith soldiers came from every direction. Hana's team fought their way toward the command center, taking casualties, pushing through despite impossible odds. 2 Marines fell, then 3. Ji-won took a blast to the shoulder but kept fighting. They reached the command center. Yoonji hacked the systems while the others held the door. She downloaded everything: financial records, communication logs, operational orders, all with Admiral Kwan's authorization codes. "Got it," she shouted. "Then we're leaving," Hana ordered. "Back to the ship now." The retreat was worse than the advance. Wraith forces knew where they were going and tried to cut them off. Hana found herself thinking in that heightened state, where everything slowed down and sped up at the same time. She could see enemy movements before they happened, predict tactics, adapt faster than her opponents could react. This was what made humans dangerous, she realized. Not strength or technology, but this ability to adapt in the moment, to improvise when plans failed, to keep fighting when logic said they should surrender. They made it to the ship with 6 Marines, Yoonji nursing a leg wound and Minho carrying an unconscious Ji-won. As soon as they were aboard, Hana pushed the engines to maximum and ran for the nebula's edge. Wraith ships pursued, but the Dauntless and the rest of her task force were waiting. They covered the retreat, fighting a running battle through the nebula until finally, battered and bleeding, they reached clear space.